If you build it, they will come. That is the lie that is told to us by Hollywood, with Field of Dreams and Wayne's World promoting that all you have to do is build it and people will show up. It's just not true. If you build it, no one will come until you promote it. If you do not promote it, share it, put it out into the world, tell people why they should buy your product, listen to your podcast, or read your blog, no one will actually do it. The extraordinary belongs to those that create it. Rebelling against business plans and debt, rebelling against what society expects of us to build cool businesses, make money, have fun, and do good. Let's create something extraordinary together. Welcome to The Rebel Entrepreneur. So welcome back to episode 4 of the Rebel Entrepreneur coaching series with Kim. Welcome back to the show, Kim.
Oh, thanks. It's nice to be back.
It's lovely to have you here. And we've also got Patrick here, who I know has been helping you build the podcast. Welcome back, Patrick.
Hello. Good to be back again.
Patrick, the podcast manager, back again. And this thing of if you build it, they will come is very interesting. A lot of people believe that they just create the thing and then they wait for people to come. And you've been building the podcast. You've been creating this thing. And now it's time to talk about how do we put it out into the world? But before we get there, like what's been happening? Where are you with the podcast? What's been going on? Have you recorded any more episodes? How's it going?
Yeah, we've recorded 2 more episodes since we talked last, I think, because I think last time I had just done the intro, the first episode. Yes. So I've done 2 live coaching recordings, which have been really cool. And Patrick, thankfully, has been there the whole time because he's like holding my hand as we do this. So yeah, it's gone well. It's nice also to have Patrick there to be like, that was good. Everything sounded normal. Because to me, it's like we're just having a normal, coaching session.
Yes.
So I have no idea if that's interesting to other people or if it's just like horribly boring or, I don't know. It's just my normal experience. So
I'll chime in now and say it's pretty powerful stuff, but it's part of the trick I think we're going to have moving forward is like converting like a therapeutic format to a podcast.
Yes.
Because in our last episode, we had a segment where Kim was like, why don't you meditate on this idea? And it was 2.5 minutes of silence.
Is that how long it was? It didn't feel that long.
I love that. Maybe we should do that in my coaching episodes as well. Let you meditate on your business for a while and come back to me when you're ready.
It felt more important that she meditate than we like have, not have dead space, but also, podcast format. Maybe we like cut that down to like 10 seconds. I don't know.
Probably 5.
It's quite interesting. So in the speaking world, the live speaking world, presenting, I have this piece that I generally repeat to people regularly about like if you're delivering a presentation, if you are the speaker, your moments of impact aren't when you're speaking. It's when your audience are thinking. And the only time they're thinking is when you're silent. So I find it really interesting and I want the dead space. And there's this whole habit in podcast world of listening to podcasts on 1.5 times, 2 times to get through the content quicker. And I'm like, you're missing out on the juice. The juice is in the blank space, the pause, the thought, because that's when you have the ideas that relate to your business. So it'd be really interesting to consider how you can, I don't know, maybe Patrick, there's a way for that blank 2.5 minutes. It doesn't have to be that long, but like Kim records a separate sentence that is, okay, so the lady or the person I'm coaching is now meditating about this. What I would like you to think about is X, Y, and Z audience. and you can actually make it like this thing that is for the audience as well. I don't know, that was my thought as you were speaking, because it's about getting people thinking.
Yeah, well, and I thought about doing that at the time, but I was like, I don't want to interrupt her. Obviously, like the client's best interest is more important than anything else. But yeah, that's a great idea to go back and record that. Because when I'm in a group, like if I'm doing a group, I do say something to the group often, like, here's what this person is doing, so let's all send her love, or whatever prompt works in that moment to engage the group.
I love that. Yeah, so I think that would be a really good thing. And like, I focus on this podcast regularly of like, okay, here's the things I want you to take away. Here's the things I want you to do, audience. And I think it actually makes it very valuable to the audience. So overall, you've got 3 episodes now, which is fantastic. Patrick's editing them. You're putting them all together. What's the plan next? Do you have a plan? Do you have where you're going next?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to invite an expert in to chat with for the next one. And then we'll go back to more coaching and kind of keep that format, like 2 coaching sessions and then an expert, 2 coaching sessions and an expert, until we hit, like, I think we were thinking like 12.
12 was the last number. Yeah, we agreed on. And then from there, we're going to consider the publishing. I believe we're in a state of get as much content as we can prepared, and then we can fully capitalize on the release.
So we're going to record 12 episodes, and then that sort of will then be, okay, let's publish them. And we're going to do sort of publish 2 or 3 on day 1 with a big promotion, and then let them come out weekly afterwards.
I don't know.
I think weekly is the best course of action. Yeah.
I'm in. I trust Patrick's judgment.
Well, you don't want to like. My thought process behind that is like, we have it. We can always start prepping to do a season 2. We'll have season 1, season 2, and if we catch fire, we don't want to lose that momentum.
Ooh,
if that makes sense.
That was a phrase. Catch fire. That feels exciting and also very scary at the same time.
Well, it's interesting. So I might add in on this with my experience of, I did season 1 of this podcast as a test, and I didn't really know, like, I've never done a podcast before season 1. I was like, am I going to like it? Are the audience going to like it? What's going to happen? How's it going to go? So I did season 1 and released it, and then I didn't have season 2 done. Like, I didn't have anything in there, and I just released it. And actually, it was after season 1 had finished and I'd got all the feedback that I decided to do season 2. So I had a 3, 4, 5 month gap between season 1 and season 2. And my audience figures when I came back had about halved. Because people had got out of the
subscription
habit. They got out of the habit of listening. So the numbers went down dramatically, and then throughout season 2, it built back up again. But I lost that momentum. And I think if I'd have just kept going, I would have kept that audience, and I would have, like, it would have had a bigger reach and kept going from there. So I think there is something to be said about losing that momentum and then having to re-kickstart it again with season 2. And I'm sure people have experienced this. Like, you do a bunch of business stuff, you take a break, you come back, and you're like, where are we? What are we doing? Does anyone remember me? And you have to re-kickstart it. I did that when I took a 6-month mini retirement. And then I get back and I'm like, oh God, I've got to get everything going again. I've got to get it all started.
That's good to know, because we're doing our first month-long trip away, and I was curious about how like a longer trip away would affect business. So that's nice to hear, guys. That feels like a lot to kind of like start back up again like that.
It does feel like a lot. I'd say there's 2 sides to it. So there is an opportunity cost of doing it, and there is the opportunity of doing it. And I remember on my 6-month mini retirement, I went away and I was trying desperately not to check emails, not to do this, not to do that, because I wanted to be present with Katie, experiencing what we were experiencing. And we got back and there was an email from British Airways asking me to run training courses from them. That's a huge client. That's a huge opportunity. And it's 3 months after the email and I'm ringing the lady and emailing going, am I too late? And it was not ideal and I missed out. But actually, what did I get from missing out? I had an incredible experience and an incredible time out there, spending time with Katie, meeting people, living life. It was just phenomenal. I wouldn't swap it for anything. But there is always that cost of doing those things, and it's being comfortable with that cost or finding a way not to have that cost. So you have someone checking your emails for you, or you have someone looking for the opportunities, or you, in podcast world, you batch up the episodes before you leave. And that's definitely something I'm trying to do, is get ahead with Patrick so that I can have a couple of months to go off and do other things. I've not managed to figure that out. I seem to end up recording episodes every week anyway.
Well, to be fair, we are very ahead in a lot of different aspects. It's just sometimes like intermittent content is sporadic, if that makes sense.
No, tell me what you mean.
Like, we have a good bundle of season 3 ready to go. It's just we have episodes that are going in between those episodes that are done.
Yes, and we need to pull it all together, which is our mission. Anyway, this is not about my podcast and my problems.
But I do want to chime in and say that having those 12 episodes recorded and done, even if we started publishing them right as you took your month mini retirement, that still leaves us with 8 weeks to get more going if we're noticing an initial success with those first 4 episodes. So that's the advantageous side of where we're coming from.
Yeah, and I love that. So from what you've heard, Kim, what are you thinking about the release of season 1 and the plan?
I think that sometime in maybe early spring would make sense to start putting it out there. I don't think we have enough right now for me to feel comfortable doing it like early New Year, but maybe early spring or late spring, perhaps.
Okay, cool. I love that. Early spring sounds great. So if you're listening to this and you can hear the truck that has been reversing past my house for 12 minutes, my house is not that big. I'm in Toronto hanging out and I don't know why it's still reversing, but I apologize. One of the pains of recording a podcast on the road and not in a studio is you occasionally get noises out in the world. So we're thinking early release in spring. My thought, Kim, is, I don't know if you've seen this, but shows like, I'm a big Marvel fan. I love Marvel shows. And the latest Marvel series is about to come out on Disney Plus this Wednesday. It's called Hawkeye. And what they do is they release 2 episodes on the first day. And then they make you wait a week for the second one. And the reason they do that is 1 episode is not quite enough to get you hooked and addicted. Like, you'll watch 1 episode that night, maybe 1 the next, and then you're like, I cannot wait for the next one. So to give the people that listen to the first one and go, oh, this is great, I want to listen to the second one straight away, it's worth having 2, maybe even 3 up immediately and then releasing them weekly afterwards. Maybe it's 2, but that you've then got 2 episodes to promote. And the people who really get into the first episode can then listen to the first coaching episode, which is the real meat of what you're doing. So I think, like, if I were you, I'd have 2 up straight away and then release weekly afterwards. And then we kind of need to think about the promotion and the plan and how do we do that. And I asked you 3 questions last time. I don't know if you remember the questions.
Yeah, Patrick and I went over them the other day. So
I love that. That's awesome. That just makes my heart sing. Quite often I say to people, here's the 3 questions you have to think about, and they don't write them down. They don't even do anything, and nothing's going to happen. So this just makes my heart sing. What resources do you have was question 1.
Yes.
So I can share what I remember.
Okay, I have them listed. Do you want me to read them off, and you can elaborate on them?
Go for it.
So we have Kim's Instagram for her business. What's the follower count on that, Kim?
It's like 3,000 something.
Okay, so some solid reach there. We have her mailing list as well. How many do you have subscribed to that?
More like, well, I have 2. So I have like maybe 600 people total.
600 total. Okay,
That's
also
awesome.
great. And then we have former and current clients.
There's a lot of those.
There's a lot of those.
They're all on the email list, to be fair, though, so it's kind of the same thing.
Okay, that's cool.
We have your Facebook account as well as Facebook groups you're a part of.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. So I'm part of a few female entrepreneur groups in the area that are super active.
And then that's it for that's what we came up with as our top resources. And also Mr. Donegan himself.
I'm a resource. I'm actually writing myself on this list, Mr. Donegan. I don't get called that often. It's like, who is Mr. Donegan? I don't like that. Okay,
that's the first time I've ever called you that.
It feels very formal.
Never call me that again. Which then we've actually got, which actually brings us on to what resources do you have access to through other people, which I'm probably more on this second list. Yeah, so what resources do you have access to through other people, Kim?
Yeah, I have tons of colleagues that have similar clientele and lots of other clientele that could for sure support me. Yeah, I mean, those are like, I think that's would be a pretty big network.
Yeah. And then also I have written down you're a part of a mastermind as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Secret mastermind.
The secret mastermind and the other members of the secret mastermind have quite big audiences.
They do.
And they're in non-competing spaces, which is very useful because people who are in non-competing spaces are more likely to be able to share you happily. Whereas if they're competing for the same customers, sometimes it gets a little bit I don't really feel comfortable with that. I'm driving all my customers to you. So it depends who it is. Cool. And then we've got the mastermind. At some stage nearer the time, with this particular list, it's worth putting actual names of people down. So what I would be doing when we come closer to the time is listing, okay, there's Alan with the Rebel Entrepreneur podcast and the audience there. There is X with X audience and there is Y with Y audience, because that list of names and details then, like a month out from launch, we want to try and like leave them a voicemail, send them a message, have a quick call with them, find out what's going on with them, talk to them, and then ask them, when this launches, is there a way you can like tie up to share it with your audience at the same time, please? And if we've got a good enough connection, like the reach of those people around you will be 10 times the reach of your own audience.
Yeah. True story.
True story.
Feels like
True.
True story. Well, okay, but like, how do you feel about? Because to me, it feels like a big ask to ask people to support you in promoting.
It's a big ask to ask people to support you.
Yeah, like I feel like I'm. I don't know. I don't know whose boundaries I'm crossing when I'm asking for that type of support.
Aha, interesting. So, what's the only way to know what their boundaries are?
To ask politely.
And so we just ask them and go like, I don't know if this is crossing a boundary, but I just want to ask, and feel free to say no. It's perfectly fine with me. Is this possible? And they will tell you. And if they like you, what do they want to do?
Well, I would hope help me, but I have no idea if I'm, burdening. This is something I've never done before. I've always marketed for myself. So that would be a new tactic or a new behavior for me.
It's a new experience.
Yes, that's the word.
But I think there's this thing of, so when people are making requests of someone, what they do is they do exactly what you've done, Kim, which is come up with a list of considerations. So they come up with this list of, like, I'm worried that I'm crossing a boundary. I'm worried that they won't want to do it. I'm worried that this, and they have a whole list of considerations. At that point, whose considerations are those?
Mine. Yes.
Are they theirs?
Don't know yet.
We don't know yet. Might they be theirs?
Potentially.
It's possible. Possible. Like, you don't know. What's the only way to know what their real considerations are?
For sure to ask.
And if they tell you, like, this is my consideration, this is my challenge, this is my whatever, and, like, is that okay for them to, like, say that stuff?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't want to affect the relationship, so I think I'd have to word it in a way that felt comfortable for me, for sure.
Definitely. So let's practice now, seeing as we're here. I have an audience. Potentially, I could help get your podcast out there. If you were ringing me a month before the launch, what would you say?
I'd be like, hey, Alan, I have a podcast coming out. I was curious if you ever support people in launching their podcasts, or if that's something you'd feel comfortable sharing with your audience.
Oh, I generally don't like helping anyone I like.
I can tell.
And I go, yeah, what did you have in mind?
Oh gosh. Well, I have a podcast coming out, so if there was some way you could potentially share that with your audience, I don't know, on your podcast or like your email list or whatever you would feel comfortable with. Here's my audience. They're women, empowered.
Yeah, so then I'd start to say, well, I do have a podcast. I have an email list on my blog. Yeah, like some of the best ways to be able to do it is to share some kind of content. Like, what do you think would be valuable to my audience? And then I've got an angle to write to my audience or talk to my audience about. And I'm sure, like, I can come up with 10, but the people you're speaking to might not. You might have to help them see the connection or the angle.
Okay.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, to offer some sort of content that is valuable to their audience.
Yeah, some sort of like, we could help you do this, I could help you do that. Like, one of the best ones for a podcast is you going on their podcast, which I know we're actually doing right now. But,
right.
Like, we're forgetting what's happening right now.
That wasn't the intention at all. But here we are. So.
But here we are. But like, for my particular podcast, I'd be saying to you, well, okay, like, how did, because I know you help women to be more empowered, more confident, to get out into the world, to remove some of the barriers. Like, does that tie into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think I would maybe say, like, I would love to offer your audience a little snippet of like how to break through blocks when they're struggling to launch a business from the psychological side.
Ooh, I love that. And then my mind is going, well, okay, how about we find a listener that needs help with that, and we'll do an episode together that will come out when you launch your podcast. And then you get to show off your skills and we get to promote the podcast at the end.
Cool.
And then suddenly
great.
I've got content for my audience that is valuable, that helps them. You've got a whole new audience that you never would have had access to that will find out. And if they like your episode on here, they will Google you, search for your podcast, and we'll push them in the, not push, we'll, what's the word I'm
Gently
looking for?
nudge.
Gently nudge, yeah. Direct. Be careful, Alan. But could you see how you could do that with each of the content creators you know?
Yeah, I definitely would have to sit down and like think about it, but because it's a new way of thinking about it, but for sure, I could definitely do that.
because that, like, some of the people have audiences of 100,000 a week. Like, they have unbelievable audiences. That your podcast would reach so many people in that first week if you could line it up and just take time doing it.
It sounds like a really great plan. also, I think that would be the bigger obstacle for me, is just like getting out of my own way to do that, to like ask for support, to put myself out there like that. That feels way harder than just being like, okay, email list, I have a podcast coming out.
Interesting. So what do you risk if you take this strategy on? Like, what's the risk? What's the downside? What might happen?
Yeah. Well, I'm like facing this in all realms of my business. I've always been very like insular in my work, and people have never had to I've never had to be seen. So like, except for my clients. Obviously my clients, they know me, they're very clear on who I am, but being seen in a more public way is very new for me. So yeah. And not that I'm hiding anything or there's like anything terribly wrong with me, but, just generally allowing myself to be vulnerable to the public is like, it's a big change.
So what's the risk? What could go wrong? What's the fear?
Judgment, misconceptions about who I am, being wrong, I think is like a really scary one, that, I say something that people decide is not correct and I get slammed for it in some way, or my business is impacted negatively.
Yeah, I guess there's a whole bunch of risks there. Do you think I've ever said something wrong?
I don't know, Alan. I haven't been looking out for the things that are wrong with what you're saying.
That's where I love you as an audience member. Yeah, but, I say wrong stuff, and I say to every coaching person, like, I don't know if I'm right. Shall we try it? And let's have an experiment, and let's put it out there and see what happens. And there is like a risk, and people will be mean.
Mm-hmm. And I've experienced that already.
You have? What happened?
Yeah, just with Instagram, when people sharing, like trolling and being like, what does healthy anger mean? Like things like that. So they like find the things that they can make wrong about what I'm sharing.
Yeah, people want to have something to argue about. And like recently, my wife Katie was in the Sun newspaper in the UK. It's the biggest newspaper in the UK, and there was an article about reaching financial independence. And we had to not read the reviews. Like, they're just, people are mean online because they can be. They're internet brave. And they're always going to be that way. They're never brave in real life. If they saw you face to face, they would never say the shit they say online. But people do that. And I don't know. I have mixed opinions about this because, you do need to prepare for this because it's coming. Nothing you can do about that will stop people being mean online, and they're going to be mean, and we have to deal with it and find a way to deal with it. It's part of life, and your fear is real and it will happen, and we just need to find a way to help you get past it, because you will help more people through your work by putting it out there than keeping it all to yourself and avoiding someone saying something mean on the playground.
Yes.
Could I chime in with a little bit of advice on this?
No.
Okay. I think it's best if kind of
I love that he just keeps going anyway. You just give Patrick some abuse.
I can't tell if you're kidding or not.
Your face got frozen on the video too, so it really looked like you were just very stern for a long time.
Sorry, Patrick.
He's just like, Alan's like, yeah, we're just gonna have to deal with people being mean. Also, shut up.
Just training.
Yeah. I would just say I think Alan also has a very good like mitigating approach with this, where you don't really necessarily read the reviews, you read the feedback. You ask for feedback and people give you honest feedback. If they're going to go to your website and type in a message, usually it's not going to be super mean-spirited, whereas like the comment section might be just someone writing one sentence just because they think they're being funny when really they're just being hurtful.
Yeah, I've never had a mean comment through the website. Through the website and the emails I get, they're always like amazing, like you helped me build a business, or you did this, or you've changed my view of this, which is incredible. The comments on the newspapers are vicious.
Man.
Like, the article that came out about me was like, you're a parasite on society, you're sucking the lifeblood out of us. And like the stuff they said about me was vicious. But like, then you look at it and you go, actually, it's jealousy, it's this, it's that. It's all motivated by they're in a bad place. And actually it's very little about me. And my favorite tactic for that, I don't know if you've ever done this. Have you ever read the bad comments in a silly voice?
No.
It's very hard to take it seriously. So that particular newspaper article, we had a bunch of friends around who were American, and I just read them out in the most overly posh British accent. So it was like, oh yes, Alan, you're a parasite on society. You're sucking the lifeblood out of the place. And everyone's laughing, and it took all the venom out of that comment.
That's amazing.
So you learn these tricks and tips to deal with this stuff. What I would say is, like, your fear is real. We just need to find a way to get past it, because it'll stop you living your life and actually helping people.
Totally. And I get that. And I think the bigger fear is that somehow it will impact my business. Like, ultimately, I don't, I work with people all day that like lash out for various reasons at me, even in sessions sometimes, so it's not that, it's the fear of it somehow getting back to my business, and I'm the one that makes money in the family at the moment. So it's that, and also the threat towards having the freedom that we want in our future. Like, we've worked so hard in my family to get to a place where we're getting closer to having financial freedom, and we're so close, and I don't want that to get broken, So I know these are all totally irrational fears and unlikely, and also I think I just have to like say them out loud and be able to move past them so that I can do big things like ask people for support and go on, podcasts with a big audience and be okay with that. So.
Well, you've had a good start so far. You're doing very well on this one.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
And also, like, I have very little fear. Like, you are the loveliest, nicest person. Like, every time we've chatted, you're lovely. I have very little fear that you're going to, like, cause a riot.
I hope not. I just haven't yet.
It's not... Like, when you talk about things I'm afraid of, like some of the other entrepreneurs I've coached with, I'm worried things will go wrong. I'm worried they're going to do this. I'm worried they're going to do that. Like, you saying something bigoted on a radio station or something is not a fear that I currently possess.
That's fair.
I was kind of baffled that was a concern of yours after listening to 3 episodes.
No, I know it's completely irrational, but this just stepping into like being visible is pretty wild. It's not something I ever imagined for myself,
Also, don't forget, I'm here. So
thanks,
you do
Patrick.
say something.
You're the best. You can just erase it. That's true.
Yeah, that is the beauty of it. And I did have one episode where like I said something I wasn't happy with. And you get that feeling immediately after you've said it. And I said it with the best intentions at heart, but it came across in a way that I was like, this does not sound like this could be misconstrued. And I asked Patrick to cut it out. So the magic of editing, no one will ever know the bad stuff I said. So cool. And then I think it's just like, it's asking these people for that support, co-creating some content that will come out in the same week, and all of a sudden you're being found by thousands of people. And my version of this when I launched the podcast was there's a very big podcast in the financial independence space called Choose FI. And Brad and Jonathan actually helped me. Like, they are the reason I have a podcast. They helped me launch it. And we did an episode the week my podcast came out. And they have I think it's 70, 80, 90,000 a week listenership for one episode. And that kickstarted my podcast in one go. They were incredible. So if we can find a couple of podcasts, a couple of people with blogs that would write an article about you, like, that's all you need. And actually that one strategy could be enough to kickstart your podcast. And I think when people are thinking about promotion and launch, they make it so complex in their head that they have to do all of these things. I'm a big fan of simplicity. Like, what are the 3 things we are going to do when we launch? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And if we can get to that list of 3, you might actually follow through and do it. Because I think like a basic, simple promotion strategy, well followed, will trounce a really complex promotion strategy that bits get missed off. It doesn't get done properly. Like, yeah, it's easier to follow something simple.
I could see myself doing that if it was like three maybe challenging but helpful actions. I feel like I could do that.
I love that. So I got some random ideas for you, which I'm just going to hit you with a few ideas and then let you think which ones sound good. So at the moment, we've got your assets. We've got other people's assets. So you've got friends with podcasts, blogs, different creators you can reach out to. Then some ideas for you. Number 1, asking people to subscribe to the podcast. Maybe you can record a small piece and then get Patrick to put it in, something that says something along the lines of, absolutely no pressure at all, but it would mean a huge amount to me if you would hit the subscribe button to the podcast. Thank you for listening. Something like that. But just, you have to ask for what you want, which I am historically very bad about on this podcast. Don't get me wrong. Second idea is like sharing people who write nice comments about you. So you've got testimonials from the people you've helped, from the clients you've done. They've said you can share it publicly. That is a great way of like, this person said this, listen to the podcast. So that will give you some great content for social media channels for sharing with different people. So that's number 2. Number 3, which I don't know if this works for your podcast, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's the community element, which if you're recording them all up front is probably harder, but there might be a way to have a tiny little bit at the end of the podcast. Like the first 2 episodes, you say, if you've listened to this, send me a message. And then you can just share those messages. Patrick can tack it on to the end of the ones you had. But people love hearing their names, hearing that they're mentioned, the community element. Number 3 is the engaging with fellow creators, which we've spoken a lot about. And I just want you to think of 2 different angles. One is being a guest on their shows, their podcasts, their YouTube channels. And 2 is having those people on your show. And one of the ways for you to choose guests that will help you is choose guests that A, have valuable content, and B, have a huge audience. If they have a huge audience and they come on your show, what are they going to say they're doing? Oh, I was on Kim's podcast talking about this subject, and they will share your stuff. And that can get a long, long way. And then the final one is a sort of contest giveaway. And maybe it actually is like one coaching session with you, or it's a live coaching session on the podcast and they become part of it. And you can do a contest, like subscribe to the channel, do this, and then you're entered into this. And that might actually create content for season 2 as well. So there's a bunch of promotional ideas, but the key is like, what's the simple 3 things we're going to do? And any marketing plan should be like, here's the people I want to reach. Here's the things I'm going to do to reach them. And it's nice and simple, step by step. And I know I've just hit you with a load of stuff, so I'm going to shut up now. What do you think, Kim?
I mean, all of those sound pretty doable. I think I'm using Instagram a lot, so having posts on there that are, testimonials and, hey, like, subscribe, that feels easy. Just like change the call of action. There's always a call of action of some sort on all of those posts, so that feels easy. Yeah, and the giveaway, like, I've done that before for testimonials, so I feel like I could do that as well. Yeah, it just seems like stuff that generally I do, just don't think of it like actively as promoting, I guess.
So what's the thing that puts you most outside of your comfort zone but will probably have the biggest impact?
Oh, for sure. Talking on other people's podcasts or having them talk on mine.
Cool. So please may I set you a piece of homework?
Sure.
I love the nervousness there. I'm not sure that was a yes. That was more like...
It was a yes for sure. I felt like I heard you're already feeling bad for like setting the homework too at the same time. It was mutual. We know this is challenging. Yeah, for sure. I will absolutely do some homework.
Cool. So the piece of homework that I would love to set you is to find 2 people you can go on their platform and 2 people you can have on your platform. That's the piece of homework. I'd like you to have a rough idea of the size of their audience and reach as part of this, because it's an interesting angle to this. But that's the homework, is to start thinking about that, and then we can start setting up ready for the launch of your podcast.
Okay. And the idea would be around the same time that it's launching. So we'd be setting up these recordings to be launched at the same time-ish.
I think that's probably a good idea, because if we do it too early, you get a bunch of people excited and then they're like, where do I go for the podcast? Doesn't exist yet. It's not out for 3 months. And then they've forgotten about it by the time it actually comes round. So I personally believe it would be better if it came out the week in advance or on the day or a week after.
And is that something I guess I would explicitly want to say to whomever I was talking to about, like, the timing, if I was on their podcast, the timing of when?
I think possibly, yeah. And some people won't be planning that far in advance, and they'll say to you, come back to me in 3 months.
Okay.
Some people like me are really geeky about this stuff and have a spreadsheet and content plan for months. And like, if you say, can we squeeze it in the next 3 months? I'm like, not really. Come back to, like, we can plan it for 6 months. So I think it just depends on the person and their production schedule and how they do it. But if you don't start, like, we're 3 months, 4 months out, like, it feels like a nice amount of time to be able to do it, because you'll have a couple of conversations and then it might be 2 weeks before you record, and then that might be a month before you launch. So it feels like a reasonable amount of time out to do it. Equally, sometimes people say, can you come on next week? It'll be released on Monday. It just depends who it is and what they're doing, and you'll never know unless we ask.
Okay.
That's also one of those things you can ask for my help on.
That's true.
Figuring out the timing on that.
Okay.
How does that sound?
No, that sounds good.
Perfect. Okay. So time has absolutely flown, as always, on this episode. So the homework for Kim is going to be in 2 pieces. The first we know about, which is to contact 2 people to go on their show, platform, blog, whatever it is, and 2 people to have on yours. And then the second piece of homework is for everyone listening. If you're looking to promote your business, to get more customers, to get it out there, the best thing you can do is generate 10 or 15 ideas and then choose 3 that you can follow through on immediately. That you think these are the 3 that will stretch me slightly, help me reach a bigger audience, find people, and get my message out there. And promotion should be simple and easy, but it gets so complex sometimes when people are talking about marketing strategies. I'm always a big fan of the simplest, easiest version that you actually follow through with will always trounce the complex plan that you struggle to complete. So for Kim and for everyone listening, what are the 3 things that you can do to promote your business, your service, your podcast, or your blog? And for everyone else listening, do them now, do them this week, come up with the list. For Kim, come up with the list, and then we'll talk about them on the next episode, ready for your launch and the promotion of what you're doing. So for everyone listening, come up with 10, 15 ideas of how to promote your business. Choose the top 3 that you think will have the biggest impact and start now. Thank you for listening to The Rebel Entrepreneur. You can have any life you want to. Choose to build something cool. Choose to take action. Choose to work to make your dreams become reality. Stand out. Be different. Be yourself. Be a rebel entrepreneur.